mentioned those words that just don't want to behave, right? And if anybody's spent any time in like that K1, maybe beginning part of second grade, where our students are doing a great job with some of the things you've suggested already and sounding out words, we just know that there's words in our language that don't follow the rules. And we have our what we call our sight words, and those can be, if we're getting very specific, our Dolch word list, our Fry word list, right? Talk to us first about a little bit about what these sight words are, how they can kind of be a piece to that overall puzzle of our students being able to read independently. And then maybe we can start to talk a little bit about some activities that we can do with our kids to support specifically these sight words.
Yeah, absolutely. So when in the English language, there are some words that come up incredibly frequently over and over and over again. Words like and to and I and a and the, you know, these are words that are just in almost every sentence that we read or speak. And those are words that are called high frequency words. Makes sense, right? They pop up with a high degree of frequency in our reading and in our language. Some of those high frequency words are decodable words. So things like building those with the little letter cards is fine because students are able to decode them. You can sound them out. But there are many high frequency words that cannot be sounded out, that they just don't follow the rules, if you will. One word that is a good example of this is the word of. If we think about the word of in English, it's spelled OF, but it sounds like it should be spelled UV. Doesn't make any sense, right? That's a word that our students just need to recognize. And so we have to help them to build some fluency around that, especially because of the nature of the frequency with which they're going to see those words in context in their reading. And because they can't pause to sound it out, again, they just have to recognize it by sight. So those are the words that we would call sight words. One of the things that I used to tell the parents of my students for the children that I teach, I would often get asked the question, if I'm listening to my child read, where should I tell them to stop and figure it out themselves? And when should I dive in and help them? And the answer to that is, if it's a word that they can decode and you know that they know those letter name sounds patterns, let them have some what we call productive struggle. That's what's helping their brain to grow. But if we have a situation like the word of, for example, that cannot be sounded out, no degree of waiting for them to sound that out is going to help them. Just give them the word and move on. So if you notice that they're struggling with a true sight word that cannot be sounded out, just, oh, that word says of. Okay, let's keep going. So you can kind of use that sort of as your measure. I think that there's a lot of things that we can do to help our students and our children to become more fluent and to learn these words. And again, we want to make it as simple, as fun as possible. We don't want it to feel like drudgery and homework and, oh, I have to do this work now with my sight. We want it to be kind of fun and engaging. And I think that there's a lot of things that we can do. Similar to how we have, you know, our letter cards like this, you're also able to do things like take the words that are on the Dolch list. And I think, Drew, you were adding this to your resources in the YouTube channel, where you could write those words out maybe twice. So you have the word of on 2 separate cards, and you can play Go Fish with it again. You can play memory with it again, like we've done, and have your child read the word. Before you play, I would also just make sure that they understand what those words are. So you can start with a much smaller deck of cards and build it up slowly so that we're not trying to throw 50 words on them at one time. So definitely begin, and in the Dolch list that Drew's posting, you'll see that there's a list of pre-primer words. There's a list of primer words. There's a first grade list, a second grade list, a third grade list. So rather than trying to make one big deck of cards for all of those, start with one of those little mini lists and make sure that your child really knows and owns those words and is able to quickly and easily recognize them before you move on to adding in any of those more complex words as you go. So those card games, I think, would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, so if I could jump in just for a second too,
Yeah.
because I know ultimately people are going to do a Google search, they're going to look for sight words, and just wanted to once again kind of mention Edward Dolch is the name of the gentleman who first kind of came up with this concept. He identified what he called service words. There were 220 of them, and then 95 nouns broken up into those lists that Kelly had mentioned. Since Edward Dolch, there have been other educators, other researchers who have developed or come up with similar lists. There are admissions, there are additions to some of the lists. Really, again, we're trying to make this easy and simple. Don't worry or stress too much about finding like the perfect list. Kelly mentioned that we're going to post the Dolch list for you. And then I really love and want to drive home the point that maybe we take our first grade list if we have a first grader at home and we start with only a couple of those words as opposed to, trying to bite off more than we could chew and doing the whole list. And from week to week, as our student or our child shows that they have, learned a large portion of those words, maybe we start to substitute in some new ones. Maybe we take out the ones that are, super easy for them so that we can differentiate and start to change the complexity of the activity. Sorry, go ahead. It looks like you were going to say
something. I was just going to build on to what you're saying too. And I think in making sure that our students are able to read those words before we play Go Fish or we play Memory, there's some really fun things that you could do, that you could try out with your child just to introduce them, just to get them used to what those words are. When I was teaching kindergarten, first grade, or even working with my own children at home, there's a couple of fun kind of sensory type activities that would be really kind of fun that you could do to introduce those words and help them to kind of internalize what those words say. One thing that we used to do, if you have like a baking tray, a cookie sheet that has a rim around the outside, you can pour salt or sugar into that tray and have them try writing that word with their finger in that salt or that sugar in that tray. And then you just simply wipe your hand across and write it again and wipe your hand across. Some children really like that sensory input for how that feels on their finger. It helps to connect it to their brain. Another sensory application could be if you have any like Play-Doh or clay type material at home, or Model Magic or something like that. If you press out a small disc of that, kind of flatten it on a plate or a table or a cookie sheet, and have them use a pointy pencil to write the word in the clay. That also provides some really nice counter pressure against the child's finger that can feel really good to the child, and it also helps them to connect that to their brain. I've even done things where I've taken like really cheap hair gel. Like if you go to the grocery store and you get like the $1 brand of like vibrant pink hair gel. And if you empty that into a gallon-sized zip-top bag and seal it really well, put a piece of tape over the top, but that kind of cool sort of glowy gel, like it looks really interesting to the kids. And when you kind of smash that flat in the bag and have them write with their fingertip into the gel of that bag, that kind of cool counter pressure with the sparkly gel, like that is a nice input for the kids too. So there's a lot of ways that you could introduce the sight words to help the children to feel comfortable with what those words say, to learn those words in a way that's fun, that gives them a little bit of sensory input. And then you can always review those by playing those games with your little sight word cards too.
Yeah, I've even seen people use like shaving cream just again for the texture, or even just a paintbrush and water.
Yes.
Right, because the students can see, or the kids can see their formation, and then when they dry, they disappear, right?
On a chalkboard, I've seen that done too, where you use water, paintbrush with water, just on a chalkboard. If you have an old chalkboard, because it dries almost instantly, but they're able to kind of see the words, and then it disappears, and they can do it again with the water. So.
Yeah, so that's a good one. So we've got Memory, we've got the cooking sheet. I even love sight word bingo. Again, where we're calling out the word, our son, daughter, child that we're working with. again, is working on that listening comprehension. They're hearing the word, they're finding it. And then tell us a little bit about read, cover, write, and check, because that's another really interesting one for sight words specifically.
Yeah. So something that I had done in my classroom with my former students, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, is whenever we would introduce a new sight word at school, one thing that I would have them do to practice is play a game called read, write, check. So I would write down the left-hand side of a piece of paper, say 4 or 5 new sight words that we were working on. And so the students would work with a partner and they would read the word, and then either cover it up with their hand or a piece of paper, and then they would write the word next to it, and then they would uncover it and check it letter by letter. So I'd have them physically touch with one finger on each hand. For the word of, they would touch the O and then touch the F in both words and check that spelling and make sure that it was correct. But there's variations you can do on this too. If you happen to have letter tiles, magnetic letters, anything like that, you can have them do that on like a placemat even. You could write a little list of words on a sticky note, and they're going to build it with their magnetic letters and then write it. And then they can uncover the word and they can check their spelling and see how they did. So that's something fun.
Okay, so player 1 flips over a card. They say the word that they see, so but and did, clearly not a match. So after saying both of the words, we'll flip them back over, upside down, and it would be player 2's turn. Player number 2 would flip a card and say that word, did. Second card is but. Obviously, but and did are not a match. So player 2 flips both cards back over. It becomes player 1's turn again. They locate did and did. That is a pair, so they keep that pair. They have 1 point, and they continue. Okay, the next card they flip over is the word like. They say that word out loud. Pick a second card, was. Those two are clearly not a match. Those 2 cards get flipped over again, and it becomes player 2's turn. Player 2 finds both cards that say but. They take that set of cards as 1 point, and they would continue.
Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the HMH International Content Cares YouTube channel. If you're looking for more content, click on the video to the right of your screen. Welcome to our global community.